exactly what they did. But what really is a lot of people, and I've had other friends, that served over in the Middle East, and they came back. They felt the same way. If you don't believe, it's a different. If somebody was attacking your country, that's one thing. But a lot of people, they realize some of these wars we've been into, we shouldn't have been there in the first place. And then they watch their friends die. That's not the thing. Is when you pull the trigger, regardless, okay, it's some people, I hate to say it, they develop a rush for it. I mean, I've met a couple people in my life and enjoyed it like you wouldn't believe.
But they're pathological. That's fine. But they're not, such people are not they make up a very small proportion of the vets.
Oh yeah, thank God. Thank God.
Are moral people, and it isn't just they saw their friends die.
Yeah,
they saw women and children die. Some of them killed women and children.
Oh yeah,
and we did that in World War II. We have bombers that flew over and firebombed Tokyo and other cities in Japan, killing hundreds of thousands of women and children. But after the war, I'm sure it troubled them. But they felt and believed, and probably believed in their old age, that they had a moral authority there. That has changed. The Vietnam War, which was an absolute catastrophe, taught the war makers a very important lesson. And that is, it's easy to get, I guess, a bigger army if you conscript, if you draft, but you will generate, particularly if the war lasts, enormous protests at home.
Oh yeah.
And so, in order to avoid that, they said, let's use the evolving and high-tech marketing technologies and skills, and create an all-volunteer force. And so then, when we have our next wars, the protests at home will be far less, because these people signed up. They volunteered. They a volunteer army, and that's the choice you made. And the parents could get upset, and they could go out in the streets and march, but the people are just not going to get behind them. And so there were anti-war marches about the Iraq War and so forth, but they just never, ever even began to approach. Even as things started going terribly wrong, they just never approached the Vietnam level. So that was a brilliant tactic, brilliant move on the part of the war makers. And it hasn't been understood yet, hasn't been recognized. Just because you volunteer doesn't mean you get an automatic moral authority card. It just means that you've made a choice, you want to serve, and that's a good thing. But then if you're sent off by craven politicians who never go into battle with you, ever in the modern era, it just doesn't happen. That lack of a moral authority card is going to be a huge problem for you. And again, I'll repeat it. I'm happy to say it. And you can listen to television day in and day out for months and months. You will not hear any of these brilliant pundits, whether they be civilian, whether they be military, say this. And that is the principal reason for the extremely unsettling suicide rate amongst the Middle East veterans, Middle East war veterans, is because they knew, and if they didn't, they now know that they were not the moral actors there. They were abused, and it was a disaster. Vietnam had a similar thing. I mean, Vietnam, there was a lot of men that realized that as well. And again, there were a lot of Vietnam vets at terrible times. And I don't know the numbers there, but I know there's plenty of suicides with them. But there was this communist connection, and the propaganda wheels were turning pretty hard. And a lot of them actually felt that, this is a righteous war. Of course, the ones that were drafted, less so. But if you're drafted and forced to go, literally forced to do something you don't want to do, in that sense, you have at least personally taken some moral responsibility, though ultimately you your choices is to just not participate and go to jail for a while. So it mitigated a little bit. In the Iraq situation, it was so patently, obviously immoral that nobody really, I think, was able to hold on to that moral authority card. And so we have this extraordinarily high suicide rates in terms of percentages on our vets. And to acknowledge the truth of it is to be, quote, unpatriotic and to attack our own country. And that's just this unacceptable to the warmongers and the hyper-patriots and the jingoists and all that. And the politicians are afraid to lose the votes, and the media is afraid to lose ratings. And so there's another truth that gets shoved off to the side and replaced by a whole bunch of excuses and rationalizations, most of which are lies. And the process that we discussed earlier continues unabated.
Yeah, and the problem is that this keeps going on and on and on. And, that's what I'm saying. I'm hoping if they shortly, in the next year or so, disclose what's going on, well, with, what's out there, maybe they can work on, disclosing some other things. And I think that would make the American public feel a lot better because, let's face it, it's not a day I don't get somebody messaging me about they're worried about their Social Security, or they're worried about what are they going to do when they retire, if they're going to have money to live on. Now, they're going to take their health benefits away, or quite a bit of it away. They're pulling the money out of it everywhere, but then people are wondering, where's this money going that they're pulling out anyway? I mean, what's going on? So, the people aren't as stupid, okay, and as they were 20 years ago. I mean, and the reason why they're not as stupid is because the internet. I mean, people can sit there and start looking and find out a lot of information, be it true or be it false. But I mean, that whatever happens, what we say now, I mean, within a matter of seconds, people are listening to it all over the world.
It's a two-edged sword. The internet is the most powerful, both connective and research tool in all of human history, which means that if you use it right, it's extremely helpful. On the other hand, it's the most powerful propaganda medium ever created. And so if you don't make the effort, you can be easily drawn into any number of ideological traps. So it's a two-edged sword, and some people are getting the wrong edge of it. But getting back to disclosure, there's something even more, this is significant, if not more significant, than this truth action on a grand scale that would possibly start improving people's trust levels. And that is, the disclosure event also acknowledges the extraterrestrial presence. And in short order, without getting into some of the more problematic areas of disclosure, small d disclosure, that are going to be challenged, is that obviously the fact that we're not alone in the universe is confirmed instantly, which means that the interstellar capabilities of these aliens, extraterrestrials, is confirmed instantly, which means the existence of other civilizations within the galaxy is confirmed instantly. And then given the survey of the planets that have been done, and the number of planets means that the number of civilizations in the galaxy as a whole is huge, which is confirmed instantly. And so right away, people are going to go, there's a whole galaxy that we actually may be able to engage, or certainly engage parts of and learn about. We are just part of something way bigger than ourselves. And as a result, a great deal of the propaganda that continues to manipulate people in order to act in their worst interest, and also to continue to conduct the 8,000-year war addiction that we have, will erode, I think. It'll be dramatically reduced. It will be, what is the point? What is the point of going through elaborate military rituals and saber rattling over Kashmir? What is the point of saber rattling over some artificial islands in the South China Sea? What is the point of trying to initiate a new Cold War over the annexation of the Crimea? whether it is justified or not justified. What is the point of these nuclear weapons? Are we going to destroy ourselves and then we don't get to see the galaxy at all? This is a worldview changer of such size and scope that we can't really predict easily, but it's certainly a possibility that it will change worldview in such a way that not only will we much less supportive of the psychopathological leaderships, that not all leaders are psychopathological, but many are, in their efforts to continue this war addiction, but we may actually start taking measures to prevent psychopathological people from getting into leadership. We'll block them. We won't let them get there. I mean, they can in their personal life, or on a limited scale, they can do their damage, but they're not going to be leaders of nations. This would transform the world in short order. So that's the kind of thing that sits possibly on the other side of disclosure. And it's what has kept me in this for 21 years. I didn't stay in this for 21 years because I had this absolute burning passion that we be told about the extraterrestrials. I knew there were extraterrestrials here 50 years ago.
Well, hey, honestly, Steve, I mean, let's look at it this way. We go back to prehistoric man, drawing on caves, drawing, men like in spacesuits with helmets or flying in the sky on some type of contraption, the Indians, all this stuff going, for all these centuries and stuff. It tells you that common sense, there is something, it's out there. I mean, you have to be really naive to think that our planet is the only planet that has life as such as like humans or facsimile. I mean, and there is people like that are totally naive. I've had people.
It's okay. That's all right. Look, to step into the new disclosure world, we don't need 100% of people that have figured it out. We don't need 90. We don't need 60, 50. Probably a good solid 25 is more than enough, and we've got that. People will figure it out in their own good time. My job isn't to convince another, 50 or 100 million Americans that the ETs are here. We already have more than enough people that know that, including people throughout our political class and military intelligence groups, that we can take the necessary actions. And then once disclosure is announced, the rest of the public will quickly figure it out and go, okay, and then what? Right. So the point I was trying to make is that what drives me for 21 years to do what I do is because at root I'm an anti-war activist. I just don't say it. And I don't get involved in direct measures because that would have split my audience, divided people on the advocacy work itself, meaning that I could be taking or making specific statements about a war or even supporting certain anti-war activities, and there would be a certain number of people who say, well, I don't agree with that, so screw you and the horse name disclosure you wrote in on. So no, there's only a limited number of people pursuing the disclosure advocacy work. There's a lot of anti-war groups and anti-war activists out there. But the truth of the matter is, and I'm only recently starting to talk about this, is that I'm an anti-war activist. And because I have concluded long ago that disclosure has the potential to end global warfare. And by that I mean nation-to-nation warfare, at minimum, in a very short amount of time, possibly leading to the denuclearization of the planet. Internecine stuff, certain what we'll call tribal genocides could still take place. They're operating under slightly different principles. But nation-to-nation war could end pretty soon. That would be obviously a change in state of our global civilization that most people can't even envisage. I can envision it, and that's what drives me. It's a shot. We have a chance. Though I assure you, every psychopathological person in power at reasonably high levels will fight it